This video is about a very interesting property of vinegar. I put it in a eyedropper bottle. This is raw Bragg's apple cider vinegar. Of course you could use any vinegar, but I prefer to use it raw. 1 drop in a glass of distilled water. 2 at the most. 3 is too many. Not only helps me drink the water, but it has a very interesting benefit in addition. It turns off any hint of a stroke condition. A mere hint. Or severe. I mean, it turns it off completely. It's amazing. You know, vinegar, the byproduct of fermentation of yeast. And now I can understand why a little wine, a little red wine, is supposed to protect you from stroke. Duh, because wine is the precursor to vinegar, the formation of vinegar. So that's a very strange oddity I discovered. So now I drink my water with vinegar in it, and I don't have to worry about the side effects of taking so much silver, because silver can increase the likelihood of stroke if you're prone to it in your genealogy, in your family history. And the way it does it is, silver is very unstable. The only way to use it is oxidized, because that's the only time it's stable as an ion. If it's not first oxidized before becoming, before becoming soluble in water, let's put it that way. If you bypass the ionic stage, silver chloride, which is very unstable, silver nitrate, silver sulfate, they vary only in their solubility, but they're very unstable. The silver wants to come out of ionic state and go back to its metallic state. And if you oxidize it, it'll dissolve in water, bypassing the ionic stage, and it's fairly stable, but it's not completely so. You can boost it with MSM, but silver wants to come out of solution and go back to its metallic state. It's just the way it is. And vinegar encourages the ionic state of all things. So what happens is, when you take silver hydroperoxide in the quantity that I do bathing, some of it might just turn into metallic silver. And that's stressful, especially on the circulation. So by drinking water with a drop of vinegar in it, it literally cures me. It prevents me of any kind of stroke situation, because the stroke is a circulatory system problem, but it's linked to digestion, which has nothing to do with the skin. So I can bathe in silver hydroperoxide all I want to. I have to keep silver out of the bath, though, because it'll neutralize the silver hydroperoxide and turn it back into ions of silver, which I don't want, because ions of silver will immediately cause the silver to come out of solution and turn into its metallic form. Actually, I just contradicted myself, didn't I? Okay, so you know what must be happening. See, I have to do everything by inference. What do I know? For some reason, the silver hydroperoxide can be stressful if you take too much, and I do take a lot, even though it's highly soluble. And that's just it. It's so highly soluble that I'm taking more than what the body is accustomed to, because hydrogen peroxide is not exactly something made in huge quantities by Mother Nature. It's made in extremely small quantities by a healthy white blood cell. But that's very small. So I'm going beyond small, and you know why? I'm overcompensating because I don't make use of Chapter 7 in Becker's book, The Body Electricity, to complement the use of silver. That's been my problem. So my first step in trying to forego the extreme habit of taking silver baths every day is to drink vinegar in water, just a drop of raw apple cider vinegar. It's amazing. And then the next step was to start using Becker's circuits. In my case, a voltage divider circuit involving a 10 mega ohm resistor and a 1 kilo ohm resistor, and I ignore the voltage of the 1 mega ohm resistor and use instead the voltage across the 1 kilo ohm resistor to produce, coming out of a single AA battery as my source, producing somewhere in the vicinity of 150 microvolts and 150 nanoamps without load. In other words, you're testing the circuit not connected to the body, because once you connect it to the body, both values of voltage and amperage drop still further because of the resistance of the body. But that quantity measured from this device before you attach it is just the right amount. Because Becker said it's a window. Too much electricity, no good. Too little, no good. It's a window. And I didn't realize it's not only a window of amperage, but it's a window of voltage as well. So you can go too high, and 1.5 volts coming out of a AA battery is too high. So my 6.6 gigaohm simple resistor circuit that was not a voltage divider circuit didn't change the voltage at all, to speak of, but it significantly reduced the amperage down to picoamps. As if to make up the difference? Well, no, it doesn't work that way. I have to reduce the voltage below 1.5 volts. Becker said don't go above 1 volt. So I go, what do? I go above 1 volt. Just a little bit. I'm just, fudging a little. Well, it was too much. I'm a sensitive guy, and here I am going over the limit. Good grief. So I'm taking it down to 1 part per million of a volt, and 1 part per billion of an amp. And it's just the right amount for me. And it's around 100 nanoamps before I apply the body as a load to the circuit, and that's just the right amount. And all of that electricity constantly surging through my bloodstream helps me make use of the silver. See? So then I don't have to go to extremes. So I got a dietary technique, my drinking water, to prevent me from overindulging in silver. And then I have a physiological technique, electricity, wear this, or use the circuit day and night. I put it in my bed to treat the whole body, but here I'm focusing on a specific body part, my wrist, during the daytime. So night and day I make use of the circuit to help me make use of the silver. Otherwise, what am I doing taking baths in silver for, we have to look at the whole study of Becker and not try to take anything out of context. And that's what we've managed to do collectively. We've taken silver out of context and thinking, silver is all the rage, all by itself, forgetting that Becker is the reason why silver's become so popular, even though he admitted that he was sorry that that's what happened. And yet, it came out of his study of electricity. Initially, there was nothing to do about silver. It was all about electricity. So to forget the origins of silver and the context in which he used it, because he always used it in the context of electricity. When people take silver alone, they ignore the electrical component. And Becker said, silver's a poison. He told Rosemary Jacobs, and she said, yes, that's the case. Maybe because we're supposed to take it with electricity. See? We overlooked that. Now, hydrogen peroxide imparts a negative charge of electric voltage to the colloidal silver to turn it into silver hydroperoxide. So it involves electrochemistry. But it's unstable. In a jar, in a 5-gallon water jug, it's fairly stable with the help of MSM. But that's because it's just sitting there. But in the body, immersed as it is, involved with all the chemistry of the body, it's not going to be so stable. And then, different things happen as a side effect, and it's not so nice. And that's part of a problem. I feel sometimes afterwards, after I get out of the bath, I notice a heightened anxiety having taken all that silver. Even though I thought, it's good for me, right? Well, yeah, but I have to complement it with electricity. Now, the vinegar doesn't complement it. The vinegar arrests my ability to make use of silver in soluble form in the gut, which is okay. So when I take silver through the gut, I never take silver hydroperoxide anyway. I take silver particles that I've brushed off of the electrodes of my silver machine into a container, and then when I bake, like today I baked a batch of cookies, and I put the silver powder in there, but I also put beeswax so that the silver sticks to the beeswax and moves it along my system. But any silver that gets into my gut from my bloodstream, due to the fact that I take baths in silver hydroperoxide, I have to neutralize with vinegar to turn it into ionic form, silver acetate. And then my body can deal with it. See, silver hydroperoxide is very exotic, and in small quantity I'm sure it's okay. but the massive quantity I take is probably a little self-abusive. You know, at first I needed it, and I can't seem to make it any other way. I tend to be obsessive. I can't make just, run the machine for an hour and just use that instead. No, I got to run it for 12 hours and make it murky, slightly murky. I don't know, that's just the way I am, I guess, when it comes to silver. So I'm learning some other ways to regulate my use of silver. And so this is one, and it's good. I should be doing this, because I have a hard time drinking water. So at the very least, this is good just to get me to drink. And I'm supposed to be killing off parasites and bacteria in my body, and here I'm using it for a sprained wrist. And it's very good now. Still going to take some work. I still need some work on my ankle, though. So when I'm going to alternate, take turns working on my wrist one day maybe, and then trade off and work on my ankle the next day, and keep moving this around in the daytime, but have it attached in the daytime on a specific body part, and then at night put it out, with the mini earthing bed pad at the feet and the pillowcase at the head, so I engage my whole body, and that's a very diffuse orientation so that way my whole body gets treated, But in the daytime, I want to focus on specific parts. So I also want to focus on my neck at some point, because I have a very old neck injury that never completely healed, and I should be working on that. And I didn't realize this circuit can be used for other things other than just whole body treatment in the bath, which is where I first started out using this for whole body treatment, or whole body treatment in the bed, or wound care. I have neither of the three. I don't have an exterior wound that's open, a very open wound. I have a internal injury. And I always wondered, well, how do you deal with internal injuries? Well, maybe I just sleep with it. Yeah, but that's too mild. It's too diffuse. Here, I get it more concentrated, just in that little section. Now, it's treating the bloodstream as the blood flows through. So my whole body does get the benefit, but it's secondary to the primary benefit, which is the concentrated force of electricity going right through my forearm. And I determined that the area I need to heal, I kind of did it out of habit, and that's a wise way. I've been doing this for so long. I can see why I put the negative nearest the wound and the positive further away, because that's what you want when you want to regenerate an area. You want to use the negative electrode. It makes sense. The electrical energy, the electrons are coming out of the circuit at that point, and so it should be nearest the wound. Makes sense. Yeah, Becker wasn't trying to use prana or radiant energy. He was just trying to use reduced electricity. So, hey, sometimes the raw energy of electricity is okay, provided we take it in a very moderate form with a voltage divider circuit. And he did specify for the galvanic response between palladium and silver, which is the electronegativity is very similar to that of our dry cell batteries, so it doesn't take too much to figure out, well, I'll just use the same resistor. The main resistor is 10 megaohms to reduce the amperage, and then I add in a voltage divider additional resistor of 1 kilo ohm to reduce the voltage. So it works out pretty good. So that's my video on vinegar, a drop of vinegar in our drinking water. This is distilled water, so if you had mineral water, it might take a little bit more to get the same effect. But 1 drop is enough for me. Because if I put too much in, I feel stressed trying to drink all that vinegar. It's really too much for me. I'm just trying to get myself to drink. And then I noticed the side effect was that it shut down stroke conditions immediately, completely. I mean, it was amazing what it did. Truly amazing. And I kept wondering, well, shouldn't I take MSM or DMSO? But it didn't do the job. It didn't work. Vinegar does the job. It's amazing. Truly amazing. I don't even think citric acid in fruit juice does the job. I think it's vinegar. It's amazing. And it kind of makes sense. You know how I learned this? I overdosed on zinc supplement, zinc gluconate. And I wanted to save money and not buy myself zinc acetate, which is the preferred embodiment of zinc, because that's 100% bioavailable, while zinc gluconate is not. It's merely 70% bioavailable. Well, maybe in my percent it was 2%. In my case, I mean, because I must have had leftover zinc. Because when I experimented with zinc electrodes, creating zinc hydroperoxide. I literally did give myself like a stroke condition, and so all the videos I had posted on YouTube I removed because it became obvious to me that that's the wrong way to use zinc. Apparently, because of my poor absorption of nutrients, zinc acetate is the only way for me to take it, and zinc gluconate, one tablet a day is not going to kill me, but I was, you know how you take zinc throughout the day if you've got an immune problem. It screwed me. It really screwed me. And not the first day, but the second day, it screwed me. So I can see now that zinc acetate is the only way for me to take zinc. And so I cured my problem by putting vinegar in my drinking water. I turned the zinc in my body, the balance of ions, from zinc gluconate, I changed it, I shifted it over to in the direction of zinc acetate. And that's when the whole thing shifted inside, and everything just miraculously got so much more peachy keen. I really, I've tried vinegar in drinking water in the past, and I never liked it. Now I seem to need it. And it's probably because in the past I never took baths with silver. So it's probably helping to regulate the presence of silver in the bloodstream, to keep it ionic, not just in the gut, but most importantly in the bloodstream, and all the other metallic ions as well, or metallic whatevers. While when I take a bath in silver hydroperoxide, the silver is an oxidized form in the flesh, in between the cells of the flesh, the tissues, and draining through the lymphatic system. But once it dumps itself into the bloodstream, which is a one-way street, it doesn't go back into the lymphatic system, what enters the bloodstream. Well, it does actually, now that I think of it. Well, no, it doesn't, because it goes directly to the cells and feeds the cells. So in the bloodstream, it will convert into the balancing effect of silver acetate, and then it'll go back to the cells to re-nourish them. And then see, they got two doors. One door is their inlet of nutrients, and their other door is their exit for waste. And the waste doesn't go back to the bloodstream directly. It goes back to the lymphatic system first, and then it goes to the bloodstream. So when I take baths in silver hydroperoxide, I'm literally pouring silver down my drain, my internal sewage system drain of the lymphatic system. And that's where I put it. And apparently that's where it's safe. But that's where it's needed. If you've got cancer, it's going to be there, in between the cells, the spaces in between the cells of the body. But once it reaches the bloodstream, it's no good for it to remain in the form of silver hydroperoxide. So that was my mistake, was not to shut it down once it reaches the bloodstream immediately. And that's where the vinegar in the drinking water comes in, because it puts acetate ions into the bloodstream from the digestive tract, and that immediately neutralizes the silver hydroperoxide and turns it into silver acetate. And that's okay, that's safe to have in the body, to have in the bloodstream. But in the tissues, in the space between the tissues, I need it in the form of silver hydroperoxide, because any other form turns into argyria and is useless to the tissues. So this is a highly specific methodology for the use of silver, and I didn't realize it's all these technicalities, I'm still learning. I'm still new at this. But I do need to document it, and I wanted to wait, because I wanted to be sure I knew what I was going to be talking about if I brought up these subjects. So I waited a few days to talk about it, and it's just as well, because it helps me flush it out a lot better. So I hope you have a better understanding of how silver works in the physiology to our betterment if we know what we're doing. And it's slightly complicated. It's not too complicated, but it is a little bit complicated in order not to make any mistakes, because there is a caveat to using silver. It's not a heavy metal. It's a transition metal, but it's on the way. If we were to practice alchemy on silver to make it any heavier, it wouldn't be too far removed from turning it into a heavy metal like lead. But it's not that heavy yet to be chemically called, atomically called, a heavy metal. It's a transition metal. And the transition metal range is a little wide. There's a lot of metals in there like chromium, and vanadium that are transition metals. They're not heavy yet, and silver's one of them.